All right, so let's get started. Welcome everyone to our pre-release webinar for the Clear Sky Tampa Bay project. We're really glad to have you with us today to share, what we've done in this project and, how you can apply it in your own region. So do you want to go to the next slide, Sarah? Just a little background on who we are. Sarah and I are planners at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, and the Regional Planning Council is one of 10 in the state. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council serves 27 member governments across the 6-county Tampa Bay region. We are a regional organization and creating tools for multiple users and bringing in different stakeholders. That's kind of our specialty. And so this project was sort of a natural thing for us to be doing. Do you want to go to the next slide? And so just a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Just so everyone knows, the webinar is going to be recorded, and you can find the recording of this on our website, the project website. It's tbrpc.org/clearsky. And then for all the participants in the webinar, please post any of your ideas or comments and questions to the chat. And because this is a webinar with Zoom, you are automatically muted, so you won't be able to see the mute or unmute button, but we will be sure to respond to your questions. And then we will also have a Q&A session and discussion at certain points in the webinar, so we'll prompt you to start adding your questions in the chat if you haven't already. And so today during the webinar, you will be learning about the development of this toolkit that we created over the past 15 months through the Solar Energy Innovation Network with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And then you will also be learning about some of the tips and best practices to apply the toolkit in your community. And then you'll also be learning about some different opportunities for involvement in future resilience webinars and activities. And so the agenda first, right now we are doing our welcome, and then we will hop into an overview of the project, the Clear Sky Tampa Bay project. And then we will have a walkthrough through the siting tool, the sort of the primary component of the toolkit. And then we will have a fishbowl activity with our partners from the project. And then we will get into wrap up and next steps. And so first off, we would love to give the opportunity for you to connect with colleagues on the call. So we have a poll. The first asks, which focus areas best describe your current work? And you can just check all that apply. And then the next polling question is, which sector do you work in? And so you can just answer whether that's, local government or academia, nonprofit, private. And then we would also encourage you to add your name, your title, organization, and your email is optional in the chat if you want to share that with others on the call. So we'll give a few minutes for you to answer the poll questions, and then you want to add your name and organization in the chat, you can.
%78% of the group has voted. Give it another 10 seconds or so. 86%, here we go. Okay, last call. Can you see that?
Yep. And so it looks like most of you all are in the sustainability and resilience kind of work. If you're doing that kind of work, looks like energy and renewables comes in second place. And then we have several people from facilities and public works, and then environmental engineering and some others. And then for which sector people work in, it seems like most of the attendees are coming from local or regional government. A few from the private sector, and then some from academia and nonprofit. So thank you so much for answering those poll questions. And if you haven't had a chance to and you want to, please put your name and organization, position, and optional email in the chat to share with others. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Sarah if you want to get started.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alana. Good morning, everyone. Sarah Vital, I'm a senior planner with TBRPC, and many of you are familiar with the Clear Sky project, and we're even involved in the early development of it. Others may be less familiar, or this could be your first time ever hearing about this project. So I wanted to start off the webinar with an overview of the project and the progress that we've made, and also a sneak peek of what's to come. But first, taking a step back, I want to cover what really got us involved in this work in the first place. Solar energy and battery storage has many benefits for sustainability. It can help us to achieve our greenhouse gas reduction targets. We can save money on our energy costs throughout the year. But also, and really the focus for this project, is the realization that the ability to produce and store energy on site can make communities more resilient when bad things happen. Keeping the lights on, keeping medicines refrigerated, electricity flowing, communications active, and quickly stabilizing these services when they're disrupted affects the community's ability to maintain order, secure health and safety, and respond during a disaster scenario. And here in Florida, we know that it's not if a disaster strikes, but more like when. And every year during hurricane season, we're reminded of the critical importance of electricity and air conditioning, communications, and the real public safety impacts related to extended power outages. And although we understand these risks, here in our region, solar energy and battery storage, solar and storage, is not often considered a strategy to harden critical facilities to the impacts of a disaster, and it's rarely included within public safety and resiliency discourse. Typically, diesel generators support critical loads until the grid is repaired and power is restored. Solar and storage is seen more as a sustainability investment rather than a dual sustainability and resiliency investment. But why is that? Why isn't solar and storage taking up more space within resiliency conversations here in Florida? Well, before this project began, TBRPC and our project partners, who I will introduce you to in just a few minutes, we observed several barriers to the implementation of solar for resilience purposes. And these barriers are listed here, and I'll quickly go through them. Number one, solar and storage was typically absent in disaster mitigation planning considerations, or very rarely present. Number two, there was a lack of internal technical expertise among municipalities for ways to even talk about solar and storage in the context of public safety and resiliency, let alone conduct their own solar screening and feasibility assessments. Number three, there wasn't a standardized process for making decisions about solar projects that was consistent across the region. And finally, there were many political and policy barriers that limited the implementation of solar projects. And I want to pause quickly for another poll to gauge the experiences in the room. Do any of these, well, let me do polling question 2. Do any of these sound familiar to you? Have you experienced similar challenges in your areas of work? Please respond to the poll and let us know. And then you can check all that apply. Ooh, these are interesting. And then a few people are writing something else, and I hope you'll describe what you mean in the chat so we can learn. What other sorts of challenges or barriers you have observed? And I'll give this about 20 to 30 seconds. Results are coming in. $12 of you, if you get a chance. Got about 10 seconds. Last call. That's it. Can we see this? Okay, so it's this concept that emergency management professionals don't typically consider renewable energy as that strategy to mitigate the impacts of disasters. It's one of the fewer recognized strategies. That's interesting. And then we see second place, the lack of technical expertise among municipal staff for conducting these internal assessments. Third, no standardized process for prioritizing these things across the region's many jurisdictions. And then I can't see the chat now, but I'm excited to look at it later. Some of the other things described in the chat that may have been observed challenges or barriers.
So I can chime in with the chat. It seems like a common theme is the limited budgets and the high cost of solar and storage installation.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And thanks for participating, everyone. So stop sharing, going away for now. So the use of solar technologies to improve disaster preparedness and public safety, it's an emerging area of research and practice, and it's a very complex topic and really quite perfect for a proposal to fund this work through the Solar Energy Innovation Network, which is a collaborative research effort led by the National, sorry, it's hard to coordinate that. It's led by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL for short, and supported by the U.S. Department of Energy Technology's office. And last year, our team was one of 8 teams from throughout the country that was selected to participate in the SIGN program. The program brings groups of researchers, local government staff, energy specialists, innovators of all forms together to work on renewable energy related questions through a 15-month program. And our team for the SIGN program, the Clear Sky Tampa Bay team, included many partners from throughout the Tampa Bay region. And because of the nature of teleworking over the last year, we were even able to collaborate with technical advisors from across the country. We worked very closely with 4 local government partners, Manatee, Hillsborough, and Pinellas counties, and the city of Largo, along with professors and graduate students from the University of South Florida's Patel Center of Global Sustainability, and our technical advisors Converge Strategies. And I want to extend a huge thank you to all of our project partners for their participation and for sharing their time and expertise over the last year and a half with us. The Solar Energy Innovation Network is essentially a national research project where we got to work with energy professionals from throughout the country on innovative research questions related to renewable energy. And when we started, we had a very large scope of research to explore. We wanted to cast a wide net and see what we could learn during this time together. But to keep ourselves grounded, we developed a few guiding research questions to help us move forward together. The first of which was to figure out what resources may already be out there. We didn't want to recreate the wheel, but rather leverage the best of what's been done. And I'll get back to number 1 in just a minute, but moving on to number 2, we wanted to develop resources that could help our partners make decisions about where to prioritize sites for solar and storage investments. If there's money available to make an investment, how can we be strategic about where that investment should happen to better prepare our communities for a disaster scenario? In what ways can resilience and disaster risk reduction be included within these decision-making processes? And then finally, number 3, how can we better understand and quantify the value of energy resilience for public safety? We understand there's value to avoiding the impacts of power outages, but can we monetize this value and incorporate it into a traditional cost-benefit analysis? That triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, it can speak for itself, but how can we tap into that and really demonstrate the value streams associated with these technologies for resilience? So these are enormous research questions for any group to explore within a single project or scope of work. But our benchmark for success was to simply move the needle forward on these 3 questions, to establish a footing for the region on this less understood topic of solar and storage for resilience, and to create a knowledge base that we can continue to add to and develop with time. So that was our game plan. Back to question number 1, we needed to understand what was already out there. So we embarked on a comprehensive stakeholder engagement process and used many different methods of engagement: surveys, interviews, data calls, workshops, and product testing, in a sense, through the development of case studies, which we completed working primarily with the USF graduate students, professors, and our local government partners. And from that process, we gained a better understanding of the models, plans, research, and tools that are out there. And this allowed us to develop a resilience assessment methodology that is informed by all of it. And although the resiliency issues we're facing here in Tampa Bay are primarily tropical storms and hurricanes, the takeaway is that the methodology we applied is replicable and can be translated to other types of disasters and locations throughout the country because we've leveraged these nationally applicable frameworks and tools. And one example of a nationally applicable framework that we've incorporated is the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Community Lifelines construct. This construct provides not only a widely recognized way of classifying facility types, but also a framework to consider wide-ranging community resilience impacts, including the value of solar and storage projects in the context of how it impacts the people of the community and its interrelated lifelines, rather than just the infrastructure or the energy performance of one facility on its own. So with all of that as background, what we ended up creating is a toolkit, and it has two main parts. The resources for solar and storage siting assessments on the left-hand side of the slide, these are what we've created and are new on the scene. This is our contribution to the research. This includes the decision support template, a user guide, and case studies, which correspond with the siting questions we had at the start of the project. And then on the right-hand side, the toolkit includes a digital resource library, which is a curated list of resources to help expand upon siting assessments and explore that question of what is the value of energy resilience for a community. And thinking holistically about both parts of the toolkit, these components are multifaceted and can stand alone or be used in conjunction with each other. We've been referring to the toolkit as this revolving conveyor belt. So you can take what you need when you need it. You can apply different tools for different scenarios and at different stages in decision making. And because this is such a new and innovative topic, the Clear Sky Digital Resource Library is a space where more resources can be added, more boxes and tools can be stacked onto this belt as our knowledge base on this topic continues to evolve. And instead of going in depth into the template, I will hold off and let Alana take over in just a little while. She's going to walk us through it at a high level. But the solar and storage siting assessments part of the toolkit includes the decision support template, a really informative user guide, and case studies from our local government partners illustrating some of the ways that they've applied the template in their communities. And the digital resource library will continue to grow, and when it's published, will include the following resources that can help you to expand upon a siting for resilience assessment and get into some of the more nuanced areas like the value of resilience, potential policy barriers, and the technical limitations of PV systems and so on. So to summarize and conclude the project overview, our team's overarching goal was to advance commercial scale solar and storage for resilience throughout the region and beyond. And the Clear Sky Toolkit provides a foundation to do so. The toolkit is currently in review by the Solar Energy Innovation Network program, but the intention for this webinar is pre-release. So you all get a sneak peek and you can see what to expect and get a sense of what we will be publishing in the next month or so you can start to tell your colleagues. But working with our project partners, we've already observed some of the outcomes of the toolkit in terms of the different ways our partners have already and will continue to apply it and what value it may add to their organization. So listed here are some of the points of feedback we've received. And I want to pause again to gauge your thoughts on what you see as the potential highest value add of this kind of resource for your organization. And I have another poll. Let's see. There we go. So let us know what you think and what you expect in ways that you think you'll be able to apply this in your organization. Interesting. There's the all of the above options, kind of the safe option. And then we see storytelling and justification kind of creeping its way up. Give it another 15 or so seconds for people to respond. And then also, if there any other way that you see this kind of being useful in your organization, and feel free to describe that in the chat. Great. 10 seconds. All right. So all of the above, we find a lot of value in learning and screening. So increasing the technical capacity of staff to conduct internal assessments, improving the relationship, kind of bridging the divide between emergency management and resiliency focused disciplines and sustainability and energy disciplines, because they do work well together. And then storytelling and justification, another important factor. And then of course there's value in all three. Great, thank you. So thanks for your feedback. So now that you've gotten this project overview, a better understanding of why we pursued this topic, what the goals were, and ultimately what we've created through this process, I want to bring in a few of our project partners to help share their experiences. And first up is Dr. Pradeep Haldar, who is a professor at the Patel College of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. Dr. Haldar, welcome. And I will try to, maybe Alana can help me try to get Dr. Haldar on here as a panelist.
I don't see him.
Can you see me?
Oh, there he is.
I can hear you and see you. Perfect.
Perfect. All right, good. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Alana, for inviting me to chat here a little bit. And just for everybody's benefit again, as Sarah mentioned, I'm with USF, the University of South Florida, Patel College of Global Sustainability. We got involved with the project with Sarah and Alana to basically assist. We have resources. We have graduate students that got started, in fact, even before the original toolkit was created. We did a lot of preliminary work, working with the team and doing some of the original case studies. The 4 counties that Sarah talked about, Hillsborough, Manatee, Pinellas, and
City of Largo.
And the City of Largo. Yeah. Those were the 4 that we originally worked with. So we had a class of about 30 students that got engaged, and they had identified, our partners had identified about a handful of facilities at each of their, different counties and the city, and they wanted help in terms of prioritizing and figuring out which ones would be ideal for implementing a solar and storage solution, specifically as it related to resiliency. So the students got engaged. This was in fall of 2020. The students got engaged. They spent the entire summer sifting through all the information, and the partners really did a great job in helping them out. They answered a bunch of questions about which sites were critical as it related to their emergency needs. They got involved with also talking about understanding the energy needs of each of the buildings, especially as it related to if it was being used as a shelter, for example, or if it serves specific other needs than that. I mean, and there was a wide range of facilities, everything from water treatment facilities to public safety operations centers. And at this time, remember that we didn't have the original toolkit, but it did help to ask the right questions that would go into what was developed, what was asked for in the toolkit. So just in short, the students were very, very helpful in my mind. It was a win-win. I mean, the students benefited tremendously. because they learned the entire process of what it actually is, what is needed to implement a project that includes both storage and solar. Everything from the cost benefit analysis to looking at some of the emergency needs and things like that. A lot of the students actually went on to work as interns for some of the partners as well, which benefited them too. So the students, as I say, are a good resource to use. I mean, because they have to be trained, of course, but they need to be. They could be used as a resource for a lot of the local communities to filter through, identify, and help them scan through the toolkit and help with the priorities. In fact, in spring of this year, we continued the project with another batch of students. We worked very closely with Manatee County and also the city of Largo. We identified multiple school districts in Manatee County. There were probably about half a dozen. And then in the city of Largo, there were another half a dozen or so, more than that, actually a dozen or so facilities that were identified that the students did a very detailed analysis of PV installations and came up with everything from the cost benefit analysis to environmental benefits to how the facilities could reach their end goal of sustainability and things like that. So again, all I need to say is thank you very much for the students to participate in this program. And moving forward, I continue to see this being integrated into the classroom. It's good experiential learning for the students. And I continue to see the students being involved and engaged in really help prioritize. I know resources are limited within the counties and all of the sustainability managers. So, it's good to tap into the resource that we have amongst the students. So is there anything else I should be adding, Sarah or Alana, do you think, or is that good?
No, that's a great overview. And I agree. I think the collaboration between the students and municipal staff is really one of the most exciting and impactful outcomes of the project. So I hope to see that continue in the future.
Right. We look forward to it too.
Thanks, Dr. Haldar.
Thank you.
So up next, Eric Kaplan, who is the Energy and Sustainability Division Manager for Manatee County. I'd like Eric to respond to a couple questions I have. Let me try to spotlight you. There we go. So what were your expectations for this innovation project going in? And how did your expectations change over the course of the project?
First, I want to say good morning all. And on behalf of the partners, thank you for being here with us. It's been a 15-month process to this point. So kind of excited to present it. This project transformed over time, several different times over those 15 months. When we first started this project, I don't think a lot of us knew exactly what it was going to transform into. I think we knew we were going to do some solar and storage research in the way that we're focusing on resiliency needs for our municipalities. Didn't know what that was going to entail. To me, I was more or less expecting to work on some type of broad, maybe cost-benefit analysis tool that did both looking at solar and storage projects, and we were initially looking at microgrids. Those were kind of the two key areas we were looking at the very beginning. We've had a lot of meetings, involved a lot of professional partners along the way, and got some, kind of some reality perspectives from the professionals as to, what the needs are and what this project really should be. We pretty quickly got rid of the microgrid aspect. Not that it's not important, not that it's not something we're all very interested in, but as far as a tangible result-based research project for local municipalities, which, as many of you know, budgets are limited. You never know who's supporting what. And lack of land, lack of space, the microgrid research kind of went to the side, and I think some municipalities might revisit it, but our focus kind of transformed into figuring out what facilities to site when it comes to solar and storage specifically. And once we kind of harnessed our goal objective for this project, which was, a few months in, we kind of hit the ground running and were able to develop the toolkit we have now. Again, invited a lot of experts, learned a lot about our peak loads of our facilities and what solar and storage in the present day could actually do for us, what the costs are, what the benefits are, both monetarily, but also for the community. A lot of that was involved, and so with different companies and NREL guidance and the experts, it's really transcended into a toolkit that we can now use to really cite the best locations for solar as far as our resiliency needs. So we were looking at a lot of our most important, what we felt facilities were in the case of, say a storm comes by and we need them back online, your water treatment plants, your public safety buildings, things of that nature, really became our focus. And that's what we learned a lot about the needs of the peak loads there and how solar and storage can benefit those facilities and the communities surrounding them. And that's how it's evolved over the last 15 months or so.
Great, thank you, Eric. And you kind of spoke to this a bit at the end of your answer, but my final question is, what was the most insightful takeaway for you during this process?
For me, and I think probably for a lot of the partners, we came in not solar and storage experts. We're the ones that, help manage the projects, help pitch the projects, but we don't know the ins and outs. And I certainly feel that I've learned a lot more of the ins and outs to this point now, particularly when it comes to facilities and, how solar and storage can actually benefit, or, if it can't. There were some realities where the peak loads of a building were just far too high. And we realized, the cost benefit of this project may not be worth it. In other cases, it might be. So, we really got to learn more of the reality of that world because this project kind of forced us to dive into it and forced us to have the conversations with the right people. And I think better prepared all of us to look at projects that we really think can come to fruition in our municipalities when we're, pitching them to our county commissioners or county leadership or city leadership, and knowing, is this actually gonna work, benefit, and how to pitch it. Those are tools that I've definitely developed in these 15 months because of this project. And learn the realities. And the one example I kind of give is we've got a couple of solar panels at Manatee County and different arrays at different facilities that were put up, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Well, a lot of that technology is now obsolete. It's hard finding parts, it's hard finding companies to even work on them anymore. And I kind of look at solar as, an iPhone or phone technology where, version 1 is so much different than version 10. But I think we're getting to that place where, we've kind of really harnessed the technology now. And it's a lot more beneficial. And I think, that's one of the tools I'm going to use pitching projects moving forward, particularly now that storage is involved. We do not have solar arrays that have storage. That's a big part of the solar industry now, and a big part of this project that learning about is going to be very beneficial for us.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Sure.
So now I will turn it over to Alana to walk us through the siting tool.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. You can go to the next slide. So first off, I want to reemphasize that this tool the whole toolkit will be made available online for free. But I'm going to walk you through the decision support template, which is that Excel doc that guides you through the assessment process. And it helps to cite and prioritize critical facilities for solar and storage to enhance the community resilience, which can then inform new decision-making and new investments. So the decision support template, it really walks users through questions that instigate the data gathering to determine which facilities have the highest resilience need and are well suited to accommodate a solar and storage system that is sufficient in capacity to power the critical loads needed to keep powering or to keep running in the event of an outage. And then the accompanying user guide directs users to where they can find that information. So this decision support template is designed for commercial scale solar and storage on critical public facilities. So those are any facilities that need to continue operations in the event of a natural disaster and a power outage, such as hospitals, fire stations, wastewater treatment plants. And in the process of evaluating the feasibility of commercial scale solar and storage, it incorporates different public safety considerations, disaster preparedness, and post-disaster recovery, and risk reduction objectives. And then it also consolidates the most relevant resources from the emergency management discipline, the electric utility sector, and then national energy research institutions. And it packages them into a more manageable assessment tool that we recognize not everyone is going to become a solar and storage or energy resilience expert before undertaking this kind of a decision-making process. So hopefully this this tool, will help in those endeavors. Next slide. So we've kind of envisioned that the primary users of the toolkit will include local municipalities, county, regional, even tribal and state governments. Which more specifically could be, say, their critical facility managers, their energy and sustainability coordinators like Eric, and emergency management personnel. And then other potential users, those include the private sector, such as the utilities and other entities interested in investing in energy solutions for resilience, or really anyone who has a hand in making energy investments towards facilities with services that are imperative to keep running in the event of a power outage. And then we have users like, Pradeep with USF and students who want to do research. And so it's a great tool for them as well. And then most importantly for us, it was designing this toolkit for people who are not necessarily solar experts. And it's really a collaborative tool. So it helps to avoid situations where, only one person is deciding where to put a solar and storage project next. And then the next slide. So the template is divided into modules, and those help to provide a more structured step-by-step assessment approach. So it's important to understand that the modules and questions can be completed in any order the user sees fit. And by design, that enables users with limited resources to utilize whatever information they have on hand to begin an assessment. However, the project team has a recommended order, and we've been seeing it as sort of a funnel where you start off with multiple facilities, and then it helps you narrow down to 3 and then to 1, and to continue doing the assessment with that 1. And so I will use an example situation to demonstrate the toolkit, going through the toolkit process. And so let's imagine we have a county energy and sustainability manager, and they have multiple critical facilities for the county. And so they're trying to determine which facility should be prioritized first for solar and storage. And so you would first start off inputting the multiple facilities into the quick screening module. And go to the next slide, Sarah. So this quick screening module is composed of critical pathway questions. We've kind of been calling them go, no-go questions. So these are questions throughout the modules that help eliminate facilities that don't have a priority need for a resilient energy solution in comparison to other facilities being analyzed, or they might just not meet the basic solar siting criteria. So these questions are found throughout the remaining modules, but they are front-loaded here to provide an initial level of screening. And so you input the facilities and you answer the same questions about each facility, and then the cell changes color. So the green indicates that the facility might be a good candidate, or red indicates that maybe that facility will face some challenges, or solar and storage just isn't the best solution for its current needs. And each facility gets a final score for comparison's sake. And that helps to determine which 3 facilities warrant further assessment through the remaining modules. And so we designed this after getting feedback from our partners saying, well, they're going to start off with, multiple buildings, facilities, and how would they start that assessment process, considering we had it starting off with just the prioritization. And so we needed to have this initial screening to, help you just select the top few to keep, finding the data for. And so go to the next slide. Oh, okay. So no, previous slide. Yep, there. Oh, there we go. So now we can say that our energy and sustainability manager has 3 critical facilities they want to investigate further. So they found those 3 by going through that quick screening module. They saw the 3 that had the highest score, and now they're going to put those 3 through the prioritization module. And then that's going to narrow their short list of 3 facilities down to 1 priority facility for further analysis through the remaining modules. And that the prioritization module determines the relative importance of a facility in supporting community resilience by assessing the criticality of the different community functions or the essential services provided by the facility. So this module is where those FEMA community lifelines that Sarah was talking about, where those really come into play. So as we're really trying to understand their interdependencies and why certain functions are important to the local community and what consequences of a prolonged outage might be. So this example question from, if you go to the next slide. So we have a screenshot of what that a question from the prioritization module will look like. And then we also pulled an example question from the module to give you a good idea of the kinds of questions we'll be asking in this one. And so this example question demonstrates that by asking how many and which community lifelines the facility relies upon to maintain its missions. And so some other example questions from the module include the number of people served and identifying the social vulnerability index for the facility's census tract. So by the end, the energy and sustainability manager in our example will have a comparative score for each facility to determine which of the 3 are most important in supporting community resilience. And then our energy and sustainability manager will also be able to provide their decision makers, so let's say they're county commissioners, with specific examples of how a facility supports specific FEMA community lifelines and would support community resilience by being able to continue providing essential services with the addition of the solar and storage. So in summary, this module is looking at which facilities have the highest resilience need and which support the sort of the largest number of community lifelines and looking at those lifeline interdependencies. So you want to go to the next slide, Sarah. So the remaining modules are much more qualitative in nature, so they don't really spit out a score like the first 2 do. And the score really helped us just to narrow down to which facility we wanted to continue assessing. So the rest of the modules are really designed to guide the user to the information that they need to screen for more technical factors about the physical suitability and performance of solar and storage. And then these can be completed in any order that they see fit, the user would like to see. And so go to the next slide. The next one is the PV siting module. And so this one guides users through a process to assess facilities for their compatibility with some of the essential solar and storage siting requirements. And it helps them to identify criteria to ensure the facility can support the installation. So an example question from the module is, will the future nearby property developments cast shade on the proposed solar PV at the site? And so in growing cities, the user should not only consider the current conditions of the facility, but future developments as well, which might negatively impact the efficiency of the solar and storage system. So the module asks other questions, such as what the proposed system's orientation to the sun is and the percentage of the day the system might be shaded. And then you go to the next slide. So the next module is the critical load module, and that considers the facility's essential functions and the corresponding energy requirements. It also asks the user to identify the presence of an emergency circuit or the facility's energy profile and some of the critical loads. And then an example question from this module asks whether or not the energy needs change during emergency conditions, and then what some of those external conditions might be present. So, if it's in during hurricane season, you need to account for any changing conditions. So this question really helps the user to identify whether the facility will be used for an emergency purpose different than what it would be used for during a non-outage scenario, and whether the load profile will change as a result of that. So, for example, the electricity needs of a police station are relatively constant during its day-to-day operations compared to an event response. But say a community center that also serves as a disaster shelter, it might expect to see a dramatic increase in power consumption during a major event. And this might be accounted for when determining the critical load, which will help in sizing the solar and storage. So determining the variables such as time of year, temperature, number of occupants, and special events that drive peak consumption allow for the proper scaling of the energy resilience assessment to ensure the adequate power. And then the last module, this utility engagement module, determines whether the local utility identifies the facility for priority restoration. And it also considers the surrounding electricity infrastructure and its relationship to the facility. So the example question that I pulled, go back, there you go, asks whether it asks where in the system a solar and storage project would improve resilience. And then the purpose of this question is to encourage the user to think more broadly about the benefits of the project and to determine how project intentions can be aligned with utility interests. So we can all probably agree that the larger and more significant the positive grid impact of a proposed investment is, the more likely it will be supported by the utility. So addressing an area of need for utility, such as distribution upgrades or capacity sharing, that can really help bring some meaningful utility advocacy, and it can realistically help a project move forward. So go to the next slide. Now, there is a summary sheet following each module, which congregates all of the answers into a smaller table for better visual analysis. And then in addition, each module has a brief out that helps the user to understand any decision-making considerations and next steps. But at the very end, the final report out sheet, and you can go to the next slide. The final report out, is there one more, Sarah, that has a screenshot of the full thing? No. Okay, go back. So the final report out sheet compiles the brief outs from each of the modules and all of the notes for a side-by-side overview of the different insights gained for ease in printing and distribution to decision makers and stakeholders. So let's go back to our example, and our energy and sustainability manager, by the end of going through this assessment process, will have identified a facility for a solar and storage project, and they will have gathered the data to help determine the system size and to justify its installation to their decision makers. Go to the next slide. So in creating this decision support template and really throughout the project, we had some key insights that we wanted to share with you all. So the first is we had an idea that there wasn't a single comparative, standardized process for understanding facilities' criticality and prioritizing sites for energy investments, but we didn't really fully grasp the degree of difference. We learned that every entity prioritizes their facilities in different ways, which included governments with each other and utilities. So one utility, for instance, they just got a list from their local government customer, and then another utility we talked to had a small committee that made the determinations. And then we also learned the extent to which valuing resilience can be challenging. So resilience isn't always the most economical reason for a solar and storage project, and it typically isn't factored into current government or utility cost benefit analyses, as most of you pointed out in the beginning survey. And more often than not, projects require justifying a bottom line, and resilience alone isn't enough to rationalize a solar and storage project. So finding all of the socioeconomic variables that would be good indicators for resilience is also a challenge in and of itself. We recognize that the installation of solar and storage systems can be cost prohibitive, but the consideration of socioeconomic variables, those help offer another opportunity to introduce additional value streams to justify solar and storage. So within the next few months, we hope to be working with NREL to provide at least a preliminary list of some socioeconomic variables for people to consider, and they can offer those, in justifying a solar and storage project. And I would say that this is also a big area for future research. And then the last takeaway I'll highlight is how essential it is to begin discussions with utilities early in solar projects. They have a lot of the data that you'll need to make an informed decision on which sites to invest in next for solar and storage. And there's a lot of potential to align goals and planning processes so the project can be mutually beneficial, and you can go in as project partners rather than doing it alone. So those are some of the key insights and takeaways we've learned from this project, and in creating this decision support template for you all to use. And go to the next slide. So I want to just open up the floor to ask some clarifying questions. Sarah, can you see those, or do you want me to read through? Oh,
yeah, you could read them. I don't see them.
So if you have questions about the decision support template, any of the modules, feel free to add those into the chat right now, and Sarah and I will chime in to answer. And I would welcome any of our project partners to step in as well if a question is directed to one of them, or our technical partners as well who helped to build this toolkit. I know we have Wilson from Converge Strategies is with us, so I would welcome him to step in as well. Any clarifying questions? We'll give it a few minutes for this. Okay, a few more seconds, and if there's none, we'll keep moving on. And we'll have some time at the end to answer any additional questions. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so let's keep going. The next part of our agenda is a fishbowl activity. So this is where our project partners will be our fish, and the rest of the audience will be watching our fish in the bowl. And so we will have an informal conversation about their siting and planning processes and about energy and resilience in our region. And so why are we doing a fishbowl in this webinar? It gives us an opportunity to share the knowledge and experience and some of the best practices from our project partners. And our project partners represent the different levels of government. We have someone from academia, and we have our technical our technical advisor with us, and it also represents the different expertise too, because they're not all doing the same thing for their governments. And then this conversational format opens up some unexpected connections for panelists and listeners alike. So some instructions for our fishbowl participants, so our partners. We want you to talk to each other. So this is an informal conversation. And as you're talking to each other, you won't really be talking to the audience. They will be watching. And then you want to think about this as having a conversation with each other as if the audience really wasn't there, and you were sharing stories around a campfire, or maybe you were stuck in a van on the way to the airport to a conference on solar and storage. And so all partner voices are important. So listen to the other people in the conversation, respond to them. And then I will be chatting the prompts, the questions, and for the Fishbowl participants in the chat. And then these questions are really just a starting point. So don't feel like you're constricted by these questions. Feel free to, bring in other points that you want to talk about. And then after about 20 minutes, I will be jumping in to open up the questions in the chat for the rest of the webinar participants to ask questions. And then for everyone else, please listen, observe any nonverbal exchanges. So, smiles, eye rolls, etc., and jot down questions, but hold off on putting them in the chat. We'll have the last 10 minutes for you to add questions then. Okay. So I'm going to welcome all of our Fishbowl participants, our partners. And before I jump into asking any questions, I want to give each of you some space to introduce yourself, maybe in a sentence or two. Just describe, who you are, your position, and the kind of work that you do related to solar and storage. So I'm just going to follow my screen, and I'm going to start with our technical expert, Wilson Rickerson with Converge.
Hey everyone, good morning. Hey all the other partners, good to see you guys. I'm Wilson Rickerson with Converge Strategies, and we are a consulting company that focuses on the intersection of resilience and renewable energy. And we had a great time working with Alana and Sarah and the team on helping to think through the decision support framework.
Thanks, Wilson. So Hank, you are up next.
Great. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Hank Hottie, Sustainability and Resilience Coordinator for Pinellas County, and just trying to get more renewable into our energy portfolio with the county as well as many other things.
Thanks, Hank. Bart, you're up next.
Sure, Bart Weiss, the Chief Officer, Innovation and Resiliency for Hillsborough County, and we've initiated a electrical reduction efficiency program that included LED lights and others, and now we've moved on to solar, and we've not only integrated solar into a water plant, but now we're creating a 2.3 megawatt solar array to power a wastewater facility. So this is something you definitely want to get into. This tool is something you definitely want to get into to jumpstart your process towards the funding that's coming forward in the feds. Thanks.
Thanks, Bart. Laura, you're up next.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Thomas. I'm the Sustainability Administrator for the City of Largo, Florida. Excited to be here and help explore and discuss the process of creating this tool and how we can utilize it to help advance here in the City of Largo some of our renewable energy goals and our energy efficiency goals and resilience efforts. So thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, muted. Leah, you're up next.
Hey team, long time no see, and hi everybody on the call here. I am Leah Harper. I am actually a GIS analyst for the Energy and Building Management Division of Manatee County. And it's been fun to, being a spatial analyst for the county, figuring out how we're going to figure out the best location to put solar on these critical facilities. And so I'm excited for this conversation.
Great, thanks, Leah. Pradeep? You kind of already introduced yourself, but do you want to introduce yourself again?
I have. Again, Pradeep from the University of South Florida, Patel School of Global Sustainability.
Great, thanks. So we really appreciate all of our fish for participating in this activity. So to get started, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about more the tool before we talk generally about energy and resilience in the region. So the first question I have for you all is, how did you site facilities for solar and storage before using this toolkit, and then how might your work look different going forward? And then I'm just going to open it up for the fish. You guys converse.
I'm happy to kick this off here and hear from the rest of you on this too. For us at the City of Largo, we don't currently have any solar plus storage installations. We're actually planning our first one at our new City Hall facility, but it wasn't really based on any of the, primary critical, things that you should consider when developing it. It was more of a logical initiative for that particular facility. So for us, prior to this, it was really a opportunity. And now I think we have a better understanding of, all of the different aspects of how to move forward with this, and particularly like all of the different stakeholders that I wouldn't have thought of to have involved in the conversation when trying to cite one of these. And it was a really eye-opening experience for us here at the City of Largo. And like any good learning process, we have tons of questions now that we didn't know to ask, and things that we need to explore moving forward.
I'll add in that coming from the public utilities side, as we work to reduce our electrical loads through solar, we had never really considered solar or solar storage in a combination for emergency power. So this really opened our eyes to create some redundancy in our emergency systems, emergency backup power systems, so that we can evaluate where that redundancy is needed and the best value, whether or not storage is the right thing. But it really is a great tool to evaluate and hone in on your real needs.
I can jump in too. Manatee County has 2 solar arrays. We have one on our Children and Protective Services building, as well as one on kind of a little shack at one of our preserves. Obviously, one serves more of a functional operation than the other one is more of an educational tool to show the public. And going into this project, we had an idea of the perfect facility. And as we've gone through and we learned to ask the questions and get different stakeholders involved, we realized that maybe our theoretically perfect facility might not actually be the perfect one in practice. So that was really interesting to see come together.
So I guess I'm up next. So at Pinellas County, we have one building with a small solar array, and that building is we call it our central energy plant in downtown Clearwater, and it's a chiller plant. So it helps with different energy loads for multiple buildings that we have within our downtown campus. And so I guess it made sense to add some capacity at that facility since it already assists with energy loads. And so that was kind of the ideology to install that array. That said, this project is opening us up to other applications amongst our other buildings distributed throughout the county, and really to integrate with our resiliency needs, including emergency management and sheltering. There's some projects that are taking place by Duke Energy right now for solar and storage. And, I think this project for sure, and the toolkit and what Duke is doing is prompting us to look more closely at this type of technology moving forward. Otherwise, we wouldn't have of.
So another question, and this will be the last one that I ask, but I'm going to drop the rest of the questions in the chat so it can be more conversational between you all and less interview style. And so do you have any tips for users who are about to pick up this toolkit? And Wilson, Pradeep, I think you both especially can provide, some tips, being actually going through it, developing it and going through it, So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to put the rest of the questions in the chat so you can just answer them as you like.
I can say a few things here to get the conversation started. I think when we first started to do the analysis, especially as it related to storage and combination of storage and PV with the students, we had the benefit of using the REOPT tool that the National Renewable Energy Lab had created exactly for this purpose. One of the things that we found out, there was obviously an educational component for us itself to understand where the combination of PV and storage can be used effectively. number one. Number two, I think in one of the chats earlier on, there was somebody put in that I already have a generator as a backup system. Why do I need to consider PV and storage? I think one of the things that REOP does, one of the tool actually does for us is helps us optimize the right amount and combination of solar, storage, and a backup generator if you have that already. Keep in mind that backup generators use diesel fuel, and you could also run out of diesel fuel as well at some point if the outage is for long periods of time. Number one. Number two, you may not even have access to fuel in some cases unless you've already stored it for a certain period of time for your own needs. So having storage is important. Energy storage, especially if you're thinking about it from a battery perspective, is useful and important not for long durations. I mean, it's not a substitute for a generator. Typically, battery, if you look at a cost-benefit kind of analysis for it, is ideal for outages that are less than typically 4 to 6 hours in duration. I mean, if you're thinking about something that's several days long, then yes, then the backup power generator is obviously the right solution, at least for some applications, depending on the application, of course. So as I said before, there is a combination of all three that could be ideal for and if you look at it from a cost perspective, and REOPT and the Toolkit provides that as a capability. The second point I also want to mention is another thing that we found when we were doing the analysis was everybody was under the original impression that if the power goes down in a facility, the backup generator and or the battery system, the storage system, needs to provide power to the entire facility. And that's also not an effective solution from a cost benefit perspective. What we need to do, and we actually learned this from some of our other colleagues, especially some folks that did this in California, where they actually identified the priority loads. I mean, the top 25% of the loads of the facility that you need to back up and have continuous run for the facility. I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to provide storage for the entire building, especially if it's not a critical load. So that's another thing that is a learning curve for some of us to understand that it's not going to power the entire building. It's not going to necessarily power, for example, hallway lights and things that are not necessarily needed. So just a couple of quick pointers there. Let me throw some of those thoughts back to our partner teams and get their response to how they're thinking about implementing both energy storage with generators and also in terms of critical loads that they're thinking about in their facilities.
Just to build on that for just a second, and going back to one of the earlier questions too about what do we learn about siting. We were really struck by looking at the local mitigation strategies across all the partner counties. That there were already this big pipeline of something like 100 plus identified diesel generator projects for emergency backup power within the Tampa Bay region that sort of needed funding, and they weren't sure where it was going to come from. They were going to push up to FEMA to try to get some funding, but that might or might not work. And that's what really reinforced for us that energy for the emergency management community is not entirely, but traditionally sort of diesel generators first and foremost, because it's tried and true and it works. Ish. To the earlier point there about, why I've got a generator, I just want to amplify your point that you can use solar and storage to stretch diesel supply. But similarly, I think that from the sustainability side, relying just on solar and storage for resilience, if you're looking at longer duration outages, a lot of the rooftops and plots of land we were looking at didn't have quite enough for sort of entirely solar and storage. So I think no matter what you're doing down the road, whether you're coming from the emergency management side, it's learning about how to integrate solar and storage to stretch. If you're coming from the solar and storage side, it's appreciating the incumbent generators that are already on site. You may need to rely on them at least for part of your resilience solution. So that was something that really sort of came to the fore for us. And I think going forward, looking at other cities and towns, like one of the first things we've done in a couple other solar energy innovation network areas is sort of pull the local mitigation strategy off the shelf and say, what do they say about their backup plans, and sort of start there as a way up. So it's been, I think there's sort of this conversation, there's a lot more to happen down the road, both within the region, obviously, but then beyond too. And you all have really been showing the way. It's been great to see.
And to touch on that point, thank you for sharing that about pulling the local mitigation strategy off the shelf and going to Alana's next question, thinking about the role of energy and resilience in planning processes. I think it's clear how much opportunity there is to partner with emergency management and really look at those criticality levels of different facilities and enhance our approach to emergency management and mitigation strategies. I'm not sure if anyone else here, had a similar experience, but being able to partner with those roles in the organization and start that dialogue in maybe a new way was really a great opportunity, and I think will lead to future benefits that aren't even directly related to the toolkit, but will just advance resilience strategies, in our region, certainly with all of us collaborating here on this by quite a bit. So I think, that local mitigation strategy, using that as a tool to help develop and create responses to the toolkit is a really unique opportunity and a great way for local governments to start rethinking the way that we make our approach to these kind of conversations.
I can definitely agree with that as far as working with our emergency management teams, because we did that early on. We were told, hey, go meet with these people and figure out what you need to look at as far as potential case studies for this. And in talking with our emergency management chief and their team, we realized that while we had our own definition of critical facilities, we didn't actually have the same definition as they did, because we're looking at it from strictly, county operational standpoint. But when they look at it, they're looking at the community. And so looking at facilities that maybe aren't necessarily serving a county operation, but that serve the community, like a special needs shelter is what we looked at. It really helped us kind of understand better how to apply this technology and what direction we want to go with it.
I'd echo that, and not only go to the EOC, that your local government emergency operations center, for that list, but you can go to your electrical provider, TECO. We've worked with TECO. TECO obviously has its own list of critical facilities. That is, whoever's lost power in a storm, they'll overlook lower scores of criticality versus higher ones, such as a hospital and such. So there are many sources to go draw from and determine. The good thing about this tool and this process has been the focus away from just energy savings to how do you justify for emergency operations and what critical or criticality of your facilities there is. As Hardeep said, that for most businesses, it may not pay off to completely support your full load of a building. In public utilities, we use 10% of all the electricity developed in the country. That is, the industry across the country uses that much. So we're looking at shaving the peaks and shaving as much as we can to sustain lower cost benefit and then also emergency power.
It's, to add from my experience, one tip that I have, not at first, at least at the beginning of this process of looking into solar and storage, is to really connect with facilities, asset management, capital planning, and see what those staff or personnel or departments are thinking about in this regard, and get an understanding of where you are within your facilities and asset management, and working within that existing system and process to include solar and storage, and to see how it compares to what you're already doing as an organization. For example, thinking about generators at buildings and emergency shelters, I would assume that, that would be the only application for us, but really digging into it, we have nearly 200 generators. And, I have to figure out, well, how many are fixed versus how many are movable. And for the fixed one, what is the energy generation there? How many support special needs shelters or step down shelters, and then, and then go from there. And that's where this toolkit really helps to prioritize the building. And, we built in that no scenario so that we knew that what is a viable option to really dig in and do the research. And it's really, helping us get to the point and really drill into what our conceivable projects can be. And then knowing the funding streams internally as well as externally, like grants, it makes us makes it more realistic and competitive to go grab it. I will say that what's happening in the county is really exciting, in that we are seeing investment into solar and storage at a middle school, which acts as a step down shelter, and learning more about the actual technology. The utility providers installing it, and they're installing it before the meter. So that means that it's owned and used by Duke. It's going to be once it's up and running, and it helps with peak load on the grid 99% of the time, which is really important. It's going to be a good case study, and we'll get some data out of it. But that 1% of the time is really probably some of the most important services provided by that microgrid, in that it's going to be providing energy needs for that shelter. And sure, it's not like they're going to remove the generator, but you'll be able to switch back and forth. And what happens if for some reason we have a shortage in diesel supply? We'll be able to ensure that those who need electricity for sheltering and emergency management, those that are electrical dependent is what we call them, will have it. So it's really a win-win, and this for me, this project helped bring a lot of new information as well as expertise and guidance to help us just make the right first steps as practitioner. Otherwise we would have been just wandering around, getting lost on Google, honestly trying to figure it out. So that's just some of the tips and experience that I have in this process.
Just to chime in, for everyone else in the audience, if you haven't already and you want to add a question, please do so the Fish can answer. And then Fish, if you see in the a particularly compelling question in the chat that you want to answer, please do so.
Okay, let me say a few things too, Hank, as a follow-on to your conversation, for thinking about it more from a futuristic perspective and being in academia, and from a research perspective too, what to expect down the pike. I got really excited as part of the conversation that we were having as part of this group when we were talking about the toolkit. I got involved with the Pinellas Suncoast Transportation Authority, because they have just recently ordered a bunch of electric buses. And so the conversation we're having with them has actually connected us with several companies that are involved with the Department of Defense. I mean, as you know, Department of Defense does a lot of cutting edge demonstration projects and research. So, when they construct these bases, when their bases, whether there's a grid or not, they also have backup generators, they have a power generation system, and they have a whole bunch of load, and they'd like to have flexible storage and PV as well to back up their power. And they're actually doing a lot of these microcontroller grid applications for their uses. So the idea here is actually taking hybrid buses that have both generators in them and batteries in them, and use those as backup storage for the shelters as and when needed. When the resiliency is down, you could actually just drive the buses up to where you need the buses, or where you need the power, connected up, as long as you have a good connection between vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle, you can have that resiliency that you need across the board. And these buses have, so it's a combined generator already built in with the storage. So if you run out of gas or diesel, then the battery systems operate. So there's some demonstration projects that are currently underway at the Department of Defense. And so we're talking to the Pinellas Suncoast folks to see if maybe from a public transportation perspective, can we also do some sort of a demonstration project along those lines for resiliency, specifically where you connect it up to one of those facilities. So that was something really exciting for us. I wanted to necessarily share with you guys, and I think eventually we can build that into the toolkit too, in terms of how you implement some of those things into your facilities. Because typically a backup generator, as you said, Hank, I mean, it's sitting on the shelf, you're not using it, you only pull it out off the shelf, and whether it's working or not working, whether it has been maintained or hasn't been maintained is a big question mark. You may not be able to turn it on when you actually need it. Whereas these buses are operating constantly, they're getting maintained on a regular basis. So they are humming, and when you need it the most, when the power's down, just drive it up to where you need it. So that's I think one of these exciting things that came out of, in my mind, some of these projects that excited me for sure. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I agree. And just a quick tidbit, during Hurricane Irma, we installed power converters on our trucks to power traffic lights in major intersections when the grid was down. Forget buses, just vehicles. I mean, we could power them during the day with solar and then park them at, a traffic box. I make it sound easy. I'm sure it's a little more complicated attaching it to the grid, but we could, we have movable batteries, really, right? Yeah. So we can mobilize fleet assets that are connected to these solar and storage facilities and really become more operationalized. And you can then extend it from there. Imagine if you have a community event where you need power for, I don't know, bounce houses or food trucks, and you pull up your EV instead of, using generators. So, there's a lot of applications. I think we'll get there with time, and we got to figure out the, ROI for, bounce house blow up operations and pumps. But, it's all good and it's exciting once you start, looking at the snowball effect on applications here.
I'm going to pull on the thread a little bit briefly here too. You mentioned the powering the streetlights and thinking about after an event, a storm, and needing different levels of public safety and emergency response. That was something that came out of this project for us that was really intriguing, and I think we want to explore further is, how do you calculate that value of resilience outside of an actual facility too? And solar plus storage at, for example, stoplights, when police officers might have to man an intersection or stop an intersection if the power is out. To help with traffic flow, and what are the missed opportunities there that individual could be doing after an event rather than just directing traffic through an intersection? What other public safety responses could they be serving and helping be resilient after an event in that way? So I think there's a lot of bounce house and other applications that are really exciting in the future too when it comes to solar and storage.
I love the fact that bounce houses are up in the high criticality range. The one thing I'll throw in is the value of resiliency, and EPA's come up with a 4-to-1 to 6-to-1. That's every dollar that is invested in resiliency, you can get a 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 ratio benefit. So when you're talking to your policymakers, that's something to definitely put in to your proposals and your discussions.
That's a great sort of final point, Bart. Thanks. And I just want to extend A big thank you to all of our partners, not only for participating in this activity, but for participating in this entire project over the last 15 months. You really helped us to make this toolkit applicable not just to one area, but to the entire region and beyond. Other people in the rest of the country can use this toolkit. So we really appreciate your participation, your continued involvement. And I will turn it back over to Sarah to conclude the rest of the webinar. Thanks.
All right, so what's next for Clear Sky? So our toolkit, you got the sneak peek today. It's currently being reviewed by the SIGN program, which is one of the great advantages of working within this network. We've got experts from across the country reviewing and vetting this work, which does take time, but we're grateful for it. The actual release will be next month, and everyone here will be notified when it's available online. And we do hope this work can continue to inspire other research in this area. Some directions for future research include how this type of analysis can be expanded to include microgrids, also kind of throw out EVs based on the latest conversation. I think it's a really interesting topic that we can kind of continue to evolve in. And then, of course, the value of resilience topic. What sorts of ways can you value and measure? What sort of metrics are associated with this resilience value? I think that's a really, really interesting topic that we'll continue to explore. And we will send everyone a post-webinar email with this presentation and a link to join the Clear Sky email list, where we'll share some more announcements about the project. Specifically, when it becomes available, you'll all be notified through that email blast. We'll share more information about the other teams within the SIGN program who are developing their own methodologies and ways of thinking about solar for resilience, really cutting edge work. And it's interesting to see the ways in which this topic is evolving on a national scale and the intersection between the different teams' work. And yet again, there may be the potential to integrate the toolkit into a graduate course at USF this fall, or at the very least, it could be a useful internship experience for students who can assist another batch of local governments in applying these resources and conducting their own siting assessments throughout the region. So we're excited about that. Stay tuned for more updates. And finally, save the date for the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition's annual Leadership Summit, which will take place on January 27th and 28th here in St. Petersburg, and possibly available in a hybrid format. We're still working on those details, but the summit is where we will present the Regional Resilience Action Plan for the Tampa Bay region, which does include this topic of solar and storage for resilience within some of its actions and recommendations. And it's been a privilege to participate in the Solar Energy Innovation Network and to chip away at some of these big and important research questions on behalf of all of us, the whole team. Thank you for the opportunity to showcase our work this morning, and we look forward to continuing these conversations and moving the needle forward on solar for resilience in the region. Please reach out to Alana or I if you have any questions. Her email is listed here on the slide. And thank you very much for joining us, and we hope everyone has a really great day.